Hi, I'm Michael, and this series presents a deep dive into a secret that I've been keeping for most of my life, but one that should never have been kept at all. It's my hope that learning my secret and the insights it has given me will help you understand either your own secrets or those of at least one person near to you. These audio episodes were originally recorded and released as a single 7.5 hour long video on YouTube. That video was really just me talking to the camera, so other than a few title cards, one thumbnail, and some body language for context, you're not really missing anything by listening rather than watching. Either way, you'll hear my message. That said, I only got asked to make an audio version after the original video was completed and released, so please understand that this introduction, my spoken trigger warnings, and the episode structure and breaks have all been hacked and hammered in after the fact, and please also excuse the few references to this video and the thumbnail. I don't think there will be anything too confusing in audio form, but if there is, a link to the original video is in the show notes. Also in the show notes will be links to any references and resources I mentioned in this episode. There are 8 episodes in total. Please only listen to them in order, as that order has been very carefully and very painfully chosen. This is episode 1 out of 8, Weight and Loss. It discusses issues around weight gain and loss, including eating disorders and other related mental health issues. Hi, I'm Michael, and as you can probably see from the thumbnail, I've lost a lot of weight. Starting in September 2021, I lost over 150 pounds, or more than 40% of my body mass in a single year. I did it without medications or surgery. I didn't use a personal trainer, fad diets, or meal replacement shakes, and I don't even have a gym membership. All I did was change my food intake. And unlike the vast majority of people that have had that kind of a drastic weight loss, I've also maintained it, at least so far. It's been 2.5 years since I reached my original goal, and I haven't regained any weight back. In fact, I've dropped another 20 pounds since. And again, no drugs, no surgery, no external support or interventions of any kind. While I did naturally start to exercise more as my mass dropped, exercise is also not how I've controlled my weight. I've done that by rigorously policing my food intake. In this last year, I reached the lowest weight I've held since puberty. Compared to my highest ever weight, I am, in the most literal sense possible, less than half the man I used to be. Because that pretty shocking change to my body could be seen in the videos we share on our tiny little YouTube channel, I get asked about my weight loss a lot. And I don't mean several times a year, I mean sometimes numerous times in a single day. That's the really weird, kind of chaotic gift that posting on YouTube can bring to even a very niche channel like ours. My wife Jo and I make videos about our silly adventures on a narrowboat with an English Springer Spaniel named George. We've only got a small audience, we're not any kind of celebrities. But that small audience can still translate into a surprising amount of contact with our viewers, especially online, but more than occasionally face to face. So my weight loss, which for most people would be a private change, both happened in public view and also in the strange asynchronous manner that YouTube allows, where content can be many years, and in my case many pounds, behind reality. That's how my body, changing shape quite dramatically, became part of my personal experience of the internet age phenomenon called the parasocial relationship. Anytime I'm out just walking my dog, there's a non-zero chance that someone I'll have never met will stop me in public to tell me they know me, but I don't know them, and then they'll comment on my weight loss and ask what my secret is. And once a year for the last 3 years, Joe and I have attended a trade show where over 3 days several hundred people have very kindly lined up and also asked me, one after another, what my secret is. To be asked over and over, what's your secret, is a really strange and kind of uncomfortable thing that just a tiny bit of success on YouTube has gifted me. So I've decided to take that as an opportunity and a challenge for me to really stop and think a lot about that specific question. Because the fact is I do have a secret. And that secret is very much tied to my weight and both why I had it to lose and how I lost it. But not in the ways you might think. And it's time for that secret to come out, because I do know there are others with the same, or at least similar secrets, and yet I've never seen anyone else stand up on a soapbox and say my secret out loud and in public. And that's sad, because for all my life, it's something I would have benefited from hearing. Well, I can only imagine that those others might benefit from hearing it too. And while 25,000 subscribers on a channel about narrowboats isn't much of a soapbox, it turns out I've still been gifted a soapbox almost by accident, and so it falls to me. I've got to tell you my secret, though I really don't want to. The problem is that there really is no simple, straight-to-the-point way to safely share my secret. If I told it to you in under an hour, at best most of you wouldn't believe me, and at worst, some of you would be very, very seriously harmed. Nothing about the secret I use to control my food intake can be explained without care and attention and a deep dive over time. So I'm going to have to ask you to bear with me, be kind enough to give me your extended attention, and prepare to have your ears pop and click uncomfortably as the pressure increases. Learning my secret is going to make you uncomfortable, and I'm going to use some uncomfortable language to talk about uncomfortable things, so maybe don't watch this one with any young children in earshot. It's going to be an exceptionally long video, so please don't try and watch it all in one go either. I'm afraid it only makes sense to make and release this as one continuous piece, but we've put in a lot of chapter markers, so please take advantage of them. Most importantly, if you find anything I've got to say compelling, please share this video as widely as you can, even if, and maybe especially if, you found it unfamiliar and uncomfortable. It's really important this reaches as many people as possible, especially the people who share some of my secrets. And to do that, I'm going to need your help. Once you've heard me out, I hope you'll agree it's an important video on an important topic, but it's not the sort of thing YouTube is likely to promote widely, if at all. Finally, any ad or other revenue we can trace to this video will be going to one of the charities I've linked below. We're a small channel based in the UK, so the ones I'm familiar with are based here, and so they're not eligible for fundraising via YouTube giving. But please, if you do have the means and the time, consider donating either to them or to relevant charities in your country. These kinds of groups and people are never well funded, but they really do change and often save lives. Before I continue, I need to make one thing extremely clear. Anyone who loses more than 10% of their body mass in a single year has a serious medical issue. If they did it unintentionally, it would be obvious to everyone they should see a doctor. If they did it intentionally, that medical issue is an eating disorder. Anyone who intentionally loses more than 20% of their body mass in a single year has a very serious, quite possibly life-threatening eating disorder. I know this because I've done it multiple times, and I know precisely what it takes to do that to your body. And what it takes is an eating disorder. No human being should ever, under any circumstances, lose anything like 40% of their body mass in anywhere near as short a time as 1 year. If you do that without a doctor's help, you absolutely have a critically serious eating disorder, quite possibly my eating disorder. If you do that with a doctor's help, your doctor is either incompetent, immoral, or also has a serious eating disorder, and frankly, I'm not sure I know which of those is the most dangerous. That kind of weight loss in that sort of time frame will do serious, possibly catastrophic damage to both your body and your mind. It isn't something good to do. It isn't something that should be valorized, and it certainly isn't something anyone should ever be encouraged to do. If you find yourself either attracted to or pressured towards the idea of losing a significant percentage of your body mass, and especially if you're looking on YouTube for secrets on how to do so, and you've somehow clicked on this video because of the manipulative thumbnail and title and YouTube's pathologically exploitative algorithm, the most important thing I need to tell you right now is there's a very, very good chance that you've got a very serious eating disorder, that Google's AI models are absolutely certain you do, and the proof of that is that they're willing to leverage your health issues for their financial benefit. Please, I beg you, Ignore all their ads and propaganda and stop looking for secrets to losing weight on the internet. Instead, please follow one of the links below to resources that I hope can actually help you. I can't and I won't help you lose weight. I am not making this video to share the secret of how I lost so much weight or how I've kept it off. Teaching you my eating disorder would be as unethical and wrong as intentionally transmitting any other communicable disease. No, I'm making it to share why I'm capable of the kind of violence towards my body that weight loss represents. And doing that means revealing the secret of why I had the weight to lose in the first place. The thing is, that secret isn't how to lose weight. I did that in the most straightforward and obvious way possible. I didn't have surgery. I didn't take any medications. Neither YouTube nor anyone else paid for a personal trainer. I didn't get cancer or pick up a parasite, and I certainly didn't follow anyone else's diet advice. I just stopped eating. There was a specific trigger, which was a health worry. During COVID, I started to develop the very early signs of obstructive sleep apnea, and when I finally got to see a specialist, he told me that if I did develop apnea, my body mass index implied that I was going to leave Jo without her husband a lot earlier than she or I would want if I didn't make some significant changes pretty soon. So basically, what I did was do exactly that. I made significant changes, starting that moment. Too significant. Way too significant. Dangerously significant, really. If you're one of our regular viewers, you know the rather extreme lengths I've gone to get to the end of little dead-end canals. So really, I just did what I usually do. I went to the extremes. That means that, as I said, I just stopped eating, and I did that by turning back on an old eating disorder. I literally just stopped allowing food to pass my lips, cutting the fuel going in down to under 1,000 calories a day. I threw out everything I liked the taste of, tossed all our old dishes in the garbage, got a little one-serving rice bowl and a pair of chopsticks, and started making a very basic meal of noodles or rice, steamed vegetables, a slice of avocado, some tofu, and an egg, and then I stuck with it. While I slowly added more volume of the same ingredients once I got nearer my current weight, I've eaten the same basic meal for dinner almost every single day for more than 3 years, and that forms the bulk of the food I'll eat on any of those days. This time I made some smarter decisions with the quality and nutrient choices and the flavor of the very small amounts of food I was taking in, but basically I just used the brutally standard equation. Reduce the fuel going in to below the rate fuel is being burned, and the resulting deficit empties your reserves. Infuriating as it may be, there is no other secret to losing weight. Anyone implying they've got a secret that works is trying to shrink your wallet, not your body. That equation, plus discipline, multiplied by time, is really the only secret there ever will be, and everything from diets to exercise regimes to drugs and surgeries is really just putting the emphasis and the costs on a different part of that relatively simple bit of math. They're all just ways of tricking yourself into either swallowing less fuel or absorbing less fuel or burning more fuel. And the reason they can feel like a secret is that any sudden shift in the equation can and does work, if you can stomach that shift and the resulting fuel starvation for long enough. The problem is that you almost certainly can't. And even if you can, not one of these tricks will keep working forever. Getting the motivation to start isn't the hard part. And over the short run, merely losing weight also isn't actually the hard part either. Anyone that's been as heavy as I've been for anywhere near as long as I've been already knows how to shift the first 20 pounds. The actual hard part, once you've gotten going, is keeping up the discipline for enough time to reach your goal. And then, even if that goal was realistic and you've made it that far, the hardest part is maintaining that discipline for the rest of your life, which you'll have to do moment by moment and day by day, because once you've gained it, any weight you lose will never stop fighting to come back. It is remorseless. It never tires. It never goes away. It will never sleep, and not one of diet, exercise, drugs, or surgery will do a thing to keep it from winning that battle if you ever stop fighting it. The secret you want from me isn't how to lose weight, it's how to keep losing it and how to keep it off. And there too, I wish I had an answer that wasn't straightforward and obvious, but all I did was engage my brutal capacity for willpower, and then keep engaging it, knowing that I'd have to keep engaging it right up to the point of death. And I know, really intimately, just how frustrating and painful that answer is going to sound, because a lot of unhelpful people in this idiot world have spent a lot of time shaming those who appear over some arbitrary ideal weight, as if their weight is a personal moral failure, something that could just be fixed if they could just magically switch on willpower and discipline. Well, if you're one of those people, please go and add up. Pack on a full extra human being. Maintain that weight for a few years. Then lose it again and keep it off for the rest of your life and demonstrate this meritocratic bullshit of yours before commenting on someone else's capacities. The truth is, in a modern consumer economy, being overweight is not, in any way, caused by some personal failure. It's a biological, an economic, and social trap that's been set for all of us, and more will fall in at some point in our lives. And most who do will never, ever escape it. Doing so takes an inhuman amount of willpower and an inhumane amount of discipline. It takes the will and the capacity to abuse your body into a state of constant pain and discomfort, to consistently deny yourself pleasure and comfort, and to punish yourself brutally for any infraction. The only people alive with that kind of willpower have secrets you don't want to know, and yes, I'm one of them. I've got a secret that let me do this catastrophic thing to my body just by choosing to. But the very last thing you could ever want in your life is to have my secret at your disposal. My best advice to anyone who wants to lose weight is don't. The message that you and I and every human being should have been receiving from birth and from literally every other human in our lives is that no measurement of your mass is ever a measure of you. Your weight isn't important. It's just an arbitrary number to easily get distracted by. What's important is your health, and over the long term, the health of your mind is vastly more important than the health of your body. Well, I'm sorry to say, but if you're fixated on your mass, then the simple, honest truth is your mind isn't healthy yet. So instead of putting effort into pushing your body towards what is almost certainly an unrealistic and unattainable goal weight, put that effort into finding joy in and with your body as it is, and getting to know who you are within it, whatever that takes, and no matter how much time or money you need to invest. If you then decide that you really must lose the weight because you've been heavy enough for long enough that it is directly contributing to known health concerns, or actually impairing your ability to move without pain, which enough weight over enough time will absolutely do, then do it very slowly and by making small, incremental changes while always giving yourself time to adjust and learn what your new, hopefully permanent normal is. Before you even start, make a rigorous diary of everything you currently eat over at least 3 months, keeping note of the weights and the volumes and the varieties of food you consume. If you can, take those numbers and invest in the advice of someone with a verifiable, graduate level, hopefully recent education in nutrition science. Then, and only then, start carefully and methodically paring down those amounts while slowly replacing more processed and prepared foods with fresh, whole foods you cook for yourself. Put some of the money you save into considerably smaller dishes and better quality ingredients. Put the rest into hobbies and pursuits that both get you more active and also keep you away from grazing opportunities. Be careful to set truly realistic and very conservative goals. You want a body that's not in constant pain and that isn't going to kill you in the short run. And that moderately smaller body is a much more achievable distance away than the one where people start asking you about your secrets. Your goal isn't looking good in a mirror, especially not naked, which if you've been my size, you should know right now is never going to be possible even with extensive and expensive plastic surgery. Your goal is to breathe clearly and walk a few miles in comfortable shoes, then eventually a few miles more. Most importantly of all, do not, under any circumstances, try to follow my path. Do not even think of attempting to lose anything like 40% of your body mass, and especially not in anything under several years of very slow, very deliberate progress. Seriously, if you take anything at all away from this part of the video, let it be that. What I've done, the body I have now, and the way I got there, that isn't an accomplishment. It's not something to be proud of or celebrated for. It's an act of considerable violence perpetrated by me against myself. And beneath these clothes and in my head and in my heart, it has done severe, substantial, and irreversible damage. I may very well die because of choices made through my bad relationship with food. Do not even try to do what I have done. Take my thoughts into consideration. Listen very carefully to my conclusions. But don't ever, ever try to walk down my path. Down that path, especially if you haven't walked it before, is disaster. I know this because this isn't the first time I've lost this much weight, and sadly the odds are it isn't the last. I didn't get as heavy as I was just once by slowing down in middle age and packing on some pounds due to sore knees and too much eating out. No, I've been at least overweight, if not seriously and morbidly obese, since quite early in my childhood, and during that time my weight has fluctuated wildly. In the past, I've been significantly heavier than I was this time around, and I've lost more than 100 pounds in half a year several times in my life. This is only the most recent attempt, and while I sure hope it's the last one, the reality is I sure hope the previous ones were too. It's very painful and unpleasant, and given how many people get pretty malicious online, actually quite scary to say this in a forum as unpredictably public as YouTube, but I've lost more than half a US ton over the course of my life. That means I've also gained every one of those 1,000+ pounds first. What anyone who hasn't joined me there simply does not know is that there's a hard limit to your self-control. There's a point where your body will simply take control and push you back in the other direction, forcing you against your will into a vicious cycle. And that kind of vicious cycling is really, really dangerous. It's also so universally common that we really should think of it as the expected and normal outcome of dieting. If you lose weight for the first time today, I'm sorry to say you are starting that cycle, and you will find yourself going up and down in the future. And that's a lot harder on your body than never starting the cycling at all. The cycling is so common, it's commonly called yo-yo dieting, but I really dislike that term because a yo-yo on the end of a string is actually a really bad metaphor for what's happening. If you fling a yo-yo in one direction and you just keep moving your hand in the same direction, it doesn't cycle, it just keeps moving forward. To get the cycle to start, you have to actively and intentionally pull back in the other direction, and then you have to keep making inputs. Stop making controlled inputs, and the yo-yo cycle ends. Well, that's not what happens in weight loss cycling at all. That's why I borrow a more accurate and helpful metaphor that my flight engineer father taught me. In aviation, there's the notion of a fugoid cycle, or just fugoid, which is what naturally happens to any airplane when a pilot fails to trim that airplane's pitch. The speed of the air moving over the wings generates lift, and that lift pushes the nose to rise. But the change in the angle of the wing relative to the airflow causes drag, and that drag eventually slows the air over the wing, which leads to a loss of lift, so the plane pitches back down towards the ground. But that lets gravity take over and the whole thing speeds up again, which means more air starts passing over the wing, which increases lift and starts to move the nose back up. And the whole thing starts to repeat over and over. On each up and down cycle, a little more forward momentum will be lost and a little more downward momentum will be gained. So the up and down swings will slowly get larger and larger, the airplane getting more and more out of control with each swing. The important thing to understand is the default, normal, expected behavior of any airplane that's already in the air and moving forward is to enter a fugoid cycle. What keeps the airplane flying in a straight line at a specific altitude is the pilot actively making inputs to keep the airplane in trim, carefully and consciously making smaller and finer inputs to get everyone aboard to their destination. It's the precise opposite of a yo-yo. You stop making controlled inputs, and the fugoid cycle begins. These days, of course, it's mainly the airplane's automated systems that manage the trim and keep the airplane out of a fugoid, so the pilots don't actually have to think about it very much, and the passengers never do. But what do you think happens if the pilot intentionally pushes either too much towards the sky or too much towards the ground? Or the autopilot has some sort of a bug that pushes the controls further or faster than the pilot can manage? Or what happens if something disastrous happens and the trimming systems are severely damaged or just blown clean off? If an airplane completely loses control over its pitch, it enters a fugoid. And if it doesn't hit anything and starts cycling, then it will keep cycling, and on each cycle it will get slightly worse, slightly closer to slamming into the ground. Completely lose control over the airplane's pitch, and you've started a fugoid, and that's the end of that airplane and everyone on board. It's only a matter of time. You do not want to be in an uncontrolled fugoid. Well, the moment you start trying to lose a really significant amount of weight, a fugoid is exactly what your body's trying to create. You're trying to help yourself, but it's actively trying to resist to the point it will kill you if it has to. That's really important to understand, maybe especially for those who are just thinking about losing a little bit of extra pudginess for the first time. Even if your mind and your emotions are perfectly healthy, and mine certainly weren't, your body doesn't just passively resist weight loss, it actively shoves back, hard. The current prevailing idea is called set point theory. It basically says that once you reach and maintain a high watermark, your body learns that, and it will try to keep you at it. It does that by two means. First, it slows down your metabolism as you lose weight, and then it packs on extra appetite to get you to think more about seeking out and finding food when you're not currently eating. Both of those try to force you right back up again. And that makes sense. Your body's job isn't to consider how you look, and it certainly doesn't know about diabetes or heart disease. It doesn't care about your long-term health, or how far your swimsuit rides up. All it cares about is keeping you from starving from winter to winter. And that means packing on reserves whenever and wherever it can. Its basic program is to prepare you for the lean times, and it has no earthly way of knowing that in the 21st century, for a growing proportion of the population, there never are and likely never will be any lean times. We've all got to realize that the blood glucose homeostatic system, basically the feedback loop that tries to keep just enough energy in your bloodstream to allow you to seek out food and either dig it up or whack it to death, plus some reserves in case you need to run from something with really big teeth, stopped materially evolving in us sometime after our ancestors crawled out of the ocean and before the biggest mammal around was the size of a shrew. The dinosaurs were still around, that's what we were running from, but monkeys and humans were a long, long way off. If you're the kind of person that believes that an intelligent designer plopped us down fully formed beside those dinosaurs, well, then at least accept that for whatever mysterious reason, that designer still decided to saddle you with the blood glucose regulation system of something simpler than a titmouse. That's the system we are stuck with. Whether it came together entirely by random accident or was intentionally designed according to some ineffable plan, what that system is optimized for is, and always has been, picking the ancestors of bananas off trees when they were half an inch long, had to be peeled with our teeth, and were so starchy they were nearly impossible to digest. It never got updated once we figured out how to cook them, never mind when we figured out how to selectively breed the things for thousands of generations until they're an 8-inch packet of easily digested sugar that comes in its own handy wrapper that's just the right shape for eating. Your feedback loop is in no way prepared to deal with supermarkets, takeout pizza, high fructose corn syrup, or Amazon Fresh. And that's why both the hardware you live in and the software running it don't know how to deal with either any of those extra sources of energy or your higher level desire to do what the mirror or your doctor says. That system will pack on extra appetite for every single pound you lose. That extra appetite is pretty much going to be permanent, and in my experience it's also cumulative, adding and adding with each and every swing of the fugoid. If you've never been as heavy as I've been, as many times as I've been, you have no concept of what hunger can really mean or feel like. After significant weight loss, your stomach shrinks over time. The point at which it starts to hurt to push any more in begins earlier. But the very different gnawing sensation of all that elevated hunger never silences. I've learned the hard way, multiple times, that at a literally cellular level, the body remembers. That once my metabolism slowed as my muscles stopped having to carry all the extra mass and I inevitably hit the plateau I simply could never push below, all that extra hunger and the frustration of a maddening, unreachable goal would eventually lead to breaking discipline and a return to comfort grazing, and eventually, larger and larger portions of richer and richer foods. I've also learned, also the hard way, and over, that for every hour I did maintain discipline and didn't graze, my body would force my brain to spend a significant amount of that hour thinking in a hard, remorseless, painful loop about exactly those foods, and that these signals would never, ever, even while asleep, come to an end. I'm not a pessimist, but I am definitely a realist, and there's little reason to be anything but pessimistic about the fugoid. I've personally embodied, more than once, the abysmal statistic that 4 in 5 people who lose a significant percentage of their body mass will put back every pound, if not more, within 5 years. Fugoid. More gym time simply won't solve that problem. Late in high school, I was a powerlifter, and I could have been a competitive bodybuilder. Adding muscle mass only increases your metabolism while you're adding muscle mass. Stop growing or get injured, and you'll slam back up too. Fugoid. Drugs like semaglutide, which you may know by the brand names Ozempic or Wegovy, they simply weren't available for me, but even when they're effective and the many side effects are bearable, the appetite-suppressing effects appear to start to wear off by about 2 years. So far, it seems patients invariably regain any weight lost or more within about a year of discontinuing the medication anyway. Fugoid. I never qualified clinically for bariatric surgery, but while the outcomes for those patients are much better, even those who have literally gone under the knife for weight loss will most likely have regained a significant percentage of their lost weight within 5 years. Fugoid. I understand all of this because, as I've explained, over more than 40 years I've gained and then lost over half a ton on that maddening hamster wheel. Once I've gotten too heavy to sustain for long enough, I've wrestled my body down again, and I've done this time and again, and every time but right now, and so far, I've eventually watched myself fail and become one of the 4 in 5 again. Before this latest crash dive, I'd already learned the hardest possible way just how dismal the chances really are. That's precisely why, Even after I got down and as I've stayed down, I've never wanted to make a video about the weight loss itself, since I already knew that unless something was materially different, I'd likely end up making another video in the future where I'd gained it all back again. This one time, though, something was materially different. My motivation had changed. In the past, I lost weight for me, trying to reach the point where I suddenly and magically became happy and attractive in the way all the TV and movies and other propaganda promised. But by this time, I knew that was all a lie. I've never actually been the protagonist in my own story. As soon as that doctor sketched out what I was doing to Jo and her future, my motivation became overcoming the inertia of the fugoid for her benefit, not mine. It wasn't that simple, though. Past experience meant I knew that losing substantial weight would make me much more vulnerable, both emotionally and physically. That may not make much sense if you've never been really heavy, but drastic weight loss, especially at drastic speed, floods your body with fat-soluble hormones that have been in long-term storage. At the same time, it reduces your muscle mass, your insulation against the cold, and when in starvation mode, the resiliency of your immune system. To lose weight as I did, you have to apply significant stress to your body and your brain, and that can and does have real consequences even if you don't have my history of mental health issues. And you must be prepared for and have a plan for dealing with those consequences so that you can pull out of the dive before you either crash or the fugoid tries to force you back up again. I'm using the metaphor of the fugoid in an airplane for a reason. Just like a professional pilot, I had assessed and understood my situation and its consequences, and using past experience and training, I had developed that plan for landing this thing safely. Not only did I have that plan, because of my secret, I had backup plans. I had backup plans for my backup plans, and plans for what to do after taxiing into the gate and shutting down the engines. I was executing those plans, and I was doing it in a controlled, careful, and informed manner, all in a bid to do something very drastic and very dangerous, but in the safest possible way as I understood it. Unfortunately, sometimes some bastard just throws a flock of geese into all your engines. In the summer of 2022, just as I was approaching the end of that 150 pounds, Jo and I were moving our boat to Cambridge, where I was due to start a master's degree program in computer science that October. Returning to school as a very mature student in a field I was only self-taught in was always going to be a significant challenge for me, but I'd just been accepted to one of the most competitive programs there is, at one of the world's oldest and most prestigious universities. So you can imagine I was both very excited and pretty much terrified in equal measure. Now, for reasons I'll get into later, I can't actually feel pride. But I was feeling like all my plans were coming together, with the weight loss goal and the start of this new and exciting life and dream just coming into sight, and I was confident enough that I just very publicly told all our viewers and all my friends and family what was ahead. I was really looking forward to that dream. Right up until, on an evening when we'd moored along our route in Peterborough, two shirtless drunks suddenly knocked an innocent man to the ground and began kicking him in the head as hard as they possibly could. I knew what I was going to risk losing if I intervened. In fact, for reasons I'll get into later, I knew what I'd already lost the moment I saw the blood pooling around the orbit of his eye. But even though I was in bare feet, I had to intervene, so I did. And if my body had been as heavy and as strong and as padded against damage as it had just very recently been, it wouldn't have betrayed me and I wouldn't have ended up kicked in the head myself. That might sound like wounded masculine pride and sad second guessing, but again, I know from multiple experiences that it takes a long time for the mind to adapt to serious shifts in the body and its capacities. And those 150 pounds represent some very serious shifts. Everyone thinks of weight loss as all about flab and fat. But as that drops off, there's no reason whatsoever for the body to maintain the muscle or the bone mass required to support it, so you lose those at the same time. I'm not second guessing. If my body had been anywhere near as strong as it had been just the last time we'd been in Peterborough, then I wouldn't have ended up with a concussion, and if my mind had actually known how weak my body actually was, I wouldn't have intervened at all, at least not without a weapon in hand. Because my weight had changed so fast, my mind had no hope of keeping up. I lost that fight, and I got that concussion, and because of that concussion, I lost my dream of higher education and everything I'd hoped to do with it. I was publicly and privately humiliated. I was and am devastated. I'd lost all the sense of safety I'd built in the world over years of hard work. I haven't recovered any of that, and to be perfectly honest, I'd lost my mind, which also hasn't made it back and might never do so. Over the next several months, My damaged brain and emotions wouldn't let me stop trying to execute on the plans I'd been so focused on, so instead of maybe admitting temporary defeat and saving the possibility of recovery, I pushed past the point of no return and ended up utterly disabled. 2.5 years later, I'm still just as disabled. I might unlook it. There's a part of me that censors myself so violently that no one alive except Joe knows just how bad it's actually been. But that's because I do things like writing this all out and reading it through a teleprompter so I can mask just how badly I've lost control of my life and my emotions and my mind. What I didn't lose, though, was control over my weight. Despite unbearable hunger, unbearable emotions, and an unbearable desire to go to ground and seek comfort and safety, I never lost discipline or self-control over food, over my body and the desires it was screaming at me and agonizing me to fulfill. In the middle of all of that, I wake up ravenous every morning, and I stay ravenous all day, and I go to sleep ravenous every night. What dreams I have with what little sleep I get are ravenous dreams. My body tells me, moment by moment, that it is starving. But moment by moment, my mind can still refuse to let it eat. And that's what everyone thinks they want to know. What secret knowledge allows me to be that brutally and inhumanly self-disciplined? In order to explain that, in order to unearth and reveal that secret, I'm going to have to drill down deep. My secret isn't something you get too quickly or easily. It's only found in the deep and the dark, and getting there is going to take time and friction and pressure, and most importantly, repetition. I've given you a very superficial introduction. If you're one of those people who've been watching our videos, then you've seen a tiny bit more of me than those who haven't, but I've never let anyone below the crust. To get where we're going, I'm going to have to reintroduce myself, and then I'm going to have to keep reintroducing myself. I've mentioned the parasocial relationship, where the viewer develops a sense of knowing the person they're viewing, and just like you, I get caught up in parasocial relationships too. We all do. That's how media, and especially social media, works, and it works best when we find the person talking out of our screen relatable, and we forget that they're talking to their camera's lens, and not to us at all. But the reality is, we're both on opposite sides of an inanimate, mediating connection, a connection that is temporary, one way, and relatively superficial. That doesn't mean there isn't a real connection, it just means that whatever real connection exists isn't really reciprocal. You can only know me as deeply as I decide to reveal myself, and sadly, but also importantly safely for me, I can't actually know you at all. In order for this video to be as valuable as I think it can be, and really hope it will be, what I need to do is keep drilling down and making you aware of, and to a certain extent keep breaking through, what people who've been trained in theater and film call the fourth wall. Most of my formal education was in film. I really know quite a lot about what a camera can do and how it messes with the psychology of the audience just by having these four corners around me centered in that frame, talking straight to the lens like this through a teleprompter. All of that is technically necessary to support me in making this particular video. But I also know that it invites you to keep reverting to the parasocial relationship you're comfortable with from what you've seen so far. I'm going to try and use that knowledge to help you learn something I really do believe you need to hear. To do that, I'm going to borrow a technique from support groups. I'm going to reintroduce myself every so often, over and over. Like we're in a meeting and I'm the one that's about to share, and I'll be taking you a little bit further down my rabbit hole each time. It's artificial, but I think, and I hope, that it'll help keep the fuzzy comfort of this parasocial interaction we're having from getting in the way of some very organic truths. Thank you for listening to Weight and Loss, the first episode of this 8-part series. My story continues in episode 2, Finding Common Ground, available now.